Into the SEC win total video here. I know I did individual videos for all of them, but I lost Wi-Fi for 3 days. I moved into my college apartment, so I have to squeeze the SEC here into one video. I'm going to rapid fire the lower teams here. I'm going to talk more in depth on the bigger teams and talk more in depth on the games that I am betting here. So that's how this is going to work. Let's get right into this. I know this might not be the optimal background here. Just give me a couple days to figure it out. So just bear with me today as I try and push this out before week 1 Thursday games here. I'm going Vanderbilt under 3. I don't believe this is going to be a step up for them. I think it's a hard schedule. I'm going over 4 for Mississippi. I think they're just a little better enough. I think there's people saying they're not even good enough to be an SEC team. I still believe in Mississippi here. I'm going over 4. Under 4.5 for Arkansas. I think losing KJ Jefferson was too big. I'm going under. Florida and over 4.5. I think Florida gets the over here. This is a team that a lot of people are betting under just because of the schedule. You can look at the schedule. Yes, it's brutally hard, but this is a team that can start 5-0. And I know I have Miami beating Florida, but I think there's other games in there where they can upset an SEC team. Now, I don't know if 6 is likely. That's why I'm not betting it, because if they get to 6, they most likely are upsetting a college playoff team, Georgia, Texas, Bama, right? So I just can't see that happening. I am taking over for Florida. Just can't put down any money on that. South Carolina, this is our first bet in South Carolina. I am taking under 5.5, and I know people are going to be like, oh, they have the chance to upset somebody at home. I have 4 guaranteed wins on the schedule for them, but I also have 5 guaranteed losses. So this schedule comes down to 3 games for me, and they have to win 2 out of 3 of these games. Tell me if you think they can win 2 out of 3 of these games. At Kentucky, home for Texas A&M, and home for Missouri. I don't think they can win 2 out of those 3 games. So I am taking the under. I'm betting the under, and I got plus money. I got plus 110 on the under. I think that's really good odds for a team that has to beat 2 pretty good teams. Home or on the road here in the SEC. I don't buy it, and I'll pay to see it here, especially at the plus money mark. Kentucky, I'm taking the under. I think a lot of people like this team. They like them to take a step forward. They like the over. I just think this is a team that lost Davis at running back, one of the best running backs in the country, absolutely carried this offense, and now have a quarterback and Vanderbilt who's really, I know he was a Georgia recruit, but he's making his first couple starts here. It's just a big question mark for me to be able to see them take another step forward here. So I am going to take the under. I think they will be a team bowling at the end of the day, but I am taking under 6.5 for Kentucky. Don't love that one either. Auburn, I'm taking over at 7.5. I don't necessarily love the roster. I'm a good, huge Freeze fan. I think he's pretty decent. I think he can upset people. And I'm taking over 7.5, basically schedule-wise. I think Auburn can pull out 8 wins in there. I think they're an 8-4, very likely team. Oklahoma, I bet Oklahoma over 7.5. This is another bet. I think this is the team that's being forgotten about. Everyone likes Texas, but Oklahoma has, they got to show something here. So I am taking the over. I think this team's going to be forgotten. We're going to blink, and they're going to be all of a sudden 8-4, 9-3. I think 7.5 is way too low. This team cannot start 7-5 in the SEC. If they start 7-5 in the SEC, they're going to get trolled by all those people over there in the Big 12. They have to get at least 8 games here, and I think this ceiling could be way higher than 8. I think this team can ultimately be 10-2. I have them starting at 5-0 or 4-0 here. They beat Temple. That's where I am right now at Temple. That game's going to be crazy. They beat Houston at home. They beat Tulane at home. I have them beating Tennessee at home. That's 4-0. I have them losing Auburn. They probably split the Auburn-Tennessee game. So ultimately, they start 4-1. By week 7, I got them beating Texas. I just think the weaker team wins that game every year. So I'm taking Oklahoma. So I'm taking them to beat South Carolina at home. I have them losing to Ole Miss on the road. They're going to beat Maine at home week 10. I have them losing to Missouri on the road. By week 12, I have them beating Alabama at home. Alabama is going to get clipped at some point in the schedule. I think it's going to happen. Now, you could say they lose the Alabama game, but then I think they beat Missouri then. I think that's a split right there. And then week 14 on the road against LSU, I have as a loss. Ultimately, that is 8-4. I think there's a good chance they can be 9-3. Yes, 7-5 can happen. But I think this team's better than people are thinking. This is a team that let Dylan Gabriel go for a reason. They believe in the freshman, the rookie starter here in Jackson Arnold. This is a guy that they think can win a Heisman. That I'm already hearing comparisons that this is another Caleb Williams for Oklahoma. I like Oklahoma here. I'm trusting Jackson Arnold. I'm trusting the reports here. Give me Oklahoma over 7.5. Yeah. Moving on, Texas A&M, I got over 8.5. I think Texas A&M is another sneaky team. I think there's a lot of sneaky teams in the SEC this year, which kind of makes the SEC even more scary. I'm taking over 8.5. I think they could beat Notre Dame week 1 very easily. And if they do that, those teams are just going to roll through here. So I'm taking over 8.5 for Texas A&M. Tennessee, another over that I bet over 9 at plus money. I looking at this like plus money. Nico, their quarterback, could be arguably the best quarterback in the country. He can win a Heisman. Like, he could be that good, especially in a Josh Heupel offense. This is a guy who absolutely turns around quarterbacks' careers. I love Tennessee here. Over 9, I think it's 9 minimum for Tennessee here. Look at the schedule. I got them beating Chattanooga at home, beating NC State on the road, beating Kent State at home. I have them losing to Oklahoma as one of the losses here. They can win that game very easily. Bye week 5. On the road against Arkansas, I have a win. At home against Florida, I have as a win. At home against Bama, I also have as a win. That's going to be a huge game for Tennessee. By week 9, week 10, I have a win against Kentucky at home. Week 11, I have a win against Mississippi State at home. Week 12, I was a loss on the road against Georgia. Week 13, home against UTEP's a win. And week 14, on the road against Vanderbilt to win. I think it's 3 losses minimum here for Alabama. I'll take over 9. I'll take the chance with over 9. Plus money, and maybe worst case scenario here, I push. I don't see 4 losses on the schedule for Tennessee. LSU 9, I'm taking over as well. Now, I think 9-3 is the most likely number for LSU, but I just lean over a tad. It was a little hard for me to find some losses, and I think there are a lot of winnable games on the schedule for LSU, especially a game against Bama I think is winnable. So I am taking over for LSU. 9.5 for Ole Miss. I'm taking the over. I like Ole Miss. I like them as a sneaky SEC winner. I like them as a sneaky NCAA winner. I like Jackson Dart for Heisman. There's something to say about Lane Kiffin sticking it out here in Ole Miss, not really wanting that Alabama job. He thinks he has something special. I know he has something special. You could talk about Judkins leaving. I think that's better for this team that Judkins left. I like this Ole Miss team. I bet over 9.5. Now, I didn't do crazy amount on it just because I already have them to win the Natty, them to win the SEC. So that I already count into my investment already. But I bet over 9.5 for a smaller amount here. I think they beat Furman, they beat Middle Tennessee, they beat Wake Forest, they beat Georgia Southern, they beat Kentucky, they beat South Carolina. This team's 6-0. I have them losing on the road against LSU. Week 9, I have them beating Oklahoma. I have them beating Arkansas. I have them losing to Georgia, beating Florida, beating Mississippi State. This team looks like 10-2, 11-1 to me. I just think they're going to be that good. I think there's something to say, and I think we're not taking into effect them absolutely killing Penn State at the end of the year last year's Dogs. I think this team's going to believe. After that game, this team now comes into this season believing they are one of the best teams in the country. And I think that goes a long, long way for a team like Ole Miss. This might be one of the better Ole Miss teams we ever see. Missouri 9.5, I'm taking the under. And it's kind of the same reasoning for Kentucky, is the fact that they lost one of the best running backs in the country in Shapen, a guy that was the whole offense, a guy that came out of nowhere, the guy that just exploded onto the scene. And I think losing him is a big loss for a team like Missouri. I don't not necessarily trust Brady Cook tremendously. I don't know if anyone out there trusts him tremendously. Yes, he's a decent quarterback. I wouldn't say he's an elite quarterback. I'm taking the under. I think it's a 9-3 season for Missouri ultimately. Bama 9.5. Man, this is going to be such an interesting season. Like, if everything goes right for Bama, I think they can win the college football championship. I think they can win the Natty. This team can win the Natty. If everything clicks right, the offensive line's good, DeBoer does a great job, Milroe's a Heisman candidate. Everything can go right here. But I ultimately have under 9.5. I just think there's going to be games in here where it's not going to feel the same. I think the culture is going to be different, which ultimately leads to different results, different things happening down the road. It's tough to bring a team in year one. It's tough to be that elite in year one with a new team. It's very tough to do. It's something we see very rarely on the college football field. So I'm taking under 9.5. I don't love it. I just have 9-3 a little bit more likely than 10-2. I think Bama is a college football playoff team, whether that's back end or higher. If they're 9-3, I think they could be 11 seed. They could be a 10 seed. I think they'll let them in. It's Bama at the end of the day. I am taking under 9.5 for Bama. I honestly don't love it. I just can't trust a first-year head coach coming into the biggest team in the country and being right there at expectations. I just can't pick that to happen. Texas 10.5. I think this is way too high for a Texas team. Way too high. I get it. They have Ewers. I'm not the biggest fan of Ewers, honestly. They have Archie Manning, probably the best backup in the country. I think, like, let me paint a picture where Archie Manning gets in this year. I want to see Archie Manning play. I want to see Archie Manning take over the starting job at Texas. I think that would be crazy. And you could sit there and say that's a mind-blowing thing to say. I might make another video on this maybe some point in the year. I think Archie Manning can win the starting job for Texas. And I think it starts if Texas has a bad start against Michigan. And that great defense, Ewers just has a bad game, and they end up losing that game. I think there's a chance we could see Arch come into play here for Texas. It might sound crazy now, but just wait. Just wait. Maybe Quinn Ewers goes down with an injury. I think we see Arch Manning on the field at some point for the Longhorns this season. Ultimately, I have 3 losses to Michigan, Oklahoma, and Georgia. I'm taking the under for Texas. Don't love it either. I have a 9-3 season. Ultimately, 11-1, I can't even see for Texas. Now, I think I'm a little more biased to the under on Texas than most people. I don't think they should have got in. I think Georgia should have got in last year in the college football playoffs over them. It is what it is, though. Under 10.5, I can't. 11-1 is crazy. It's crazy for this team, especially because they lost a lot on the defensive line. This is not the same defensive line that Texas had last year. Not even close. They had an elite group, 2 first-round picks up there. And the defensive line, and now they lose both of them. I have concerns at that part for Texas. Georgia, 10.5. I have the over. I think this team is easily the best team in the country right now. People love to say Ohio State, Oregon. I think there's something to say. It's something so important of having a second-year quarterback in the same system. I don't think we're talking about that enough, because if you look at every national championships since a long time, since people have been transferring like this back and forth, we have never had a first-year transfer for a team win a national championship. It's never happened. For Ohio State, it's never happened. It's not going to happen, I don't think. And for Oregon, it just doesn't happen. And I think the team that you circle, it says that fits every box, is Georgia. And I think Carson Beck's going to have a monster season. I think Carson Beck very easily can win a Heisman Trophy. Taking the over 12.5, I have no losses. I'm taking over 10.5. I have no losses on the schedule. I think maybe their most likely loss could be Bama on the road. I think second most likely loss is Ole Miss on the road for Georgia. I think 11-1. I think they lose to Bama on the road, they lose to Texas on the road, or they lose to Ole Miss on the road. Those are arguably, you could argue Georgia, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, the 4 most likely teams to win the national championship. Just because they're the only teams, unlike Oregon, unlike Michigan, unlike Ohio State, that don't have a first-year transfer quarterback coming in. This is all teams now that have a guy that's at least in their second year, maybe third year for these teams. I think that's so huge. That's a talking point we are not talking enough about. I'm taking the over 10.5 here. I haven't bet those. Let me just recap. I made 3 bets. It's under 5.5 for South Carolina, over 7.5 for Oklahoma, and over 9 for Tennessee. If you like more of these win total videos, please hit the subscribe button. If you want to see me talk about more teams, I kind of rushed the SEC, which I feel bad about, but I lost Wi-Fi. I had to do this somewhat quick here. If you want more win total videos, there's all on my channel. I have playlists for every single one, every single team I've broken down. I had to combine the back-end Big Ten and now the SEC together. Honestly, this is probably what I'm going to do for next year, is just combine it into one video. Might be more better organized here, but I'm kind of rushing a little bit. I'm sorry about that. Life just kind of gets in the way sometimes. But ultimately, hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed. I hope someone stuck out through all 14 minutes. I'm telling you, it's probably better on 1.25 speed, although I thought I talked really fast in this video. I'm Josh Wissey. Thank you.